through the body cam of the Detroit officer, and you heard from Officer Hendrick, and you heard from Luke Kirtley that it was extremely loud. There were dozens and dozens and dozens of law enforcement, and most of them SWAT. Luke Kirtley told you about how James Crumbley was discovered that night. And the only reason he knew it is because it was all over social media with the description, the license plate, and picture of James Crumbley and Jennifer Crumbley. Why? Because they were charged. And even before they were charged, there was a lot of speculation about them being charged. Luke told you about what that building looks like, what it's for, who's normally there at night, not many people, that he shares a wall with that studio that they were found in, that mattress they pulled in was out in the hallway. He again told you how loud, and that it would have been impossible if he was in his unit not to hear that. Officer David Metzke told you that there were tons of officers, multiple agencies, and that they took a 35-pound steel ram to bypass multiple doors, and they used it, and it was loud. I think he testified we have the bigger guys do that. We saw through his body-worn camera the arrest of James Crumbley, who was laying on the mattress and seemed to be wanting to create the impression that he was sleeping. There's a big problem with that. One, we know that shortly after Luke Kirtley went out to see the license plate, that he followed him shortly after, and he was awake. And shortly after that, dozens and dozens and dozens of law enforcement show up on the scene. It's a first floor unit. The windows face that parking lot. Lights and sirens, media were there, yet he's lying on a bed as if he's sleeping. William Creer told you what they discovered. They had bought and purchased, they had purchased items with them, socks, new socks. They had clothing, they had food. There was a whiskey bottle in the trash can. There was ice. But here's the thing that was the most compelling about his testimony. The bag with the 4 phones that were turned off and $6,000 of cash was stored on the other side of the room from the backpack in a lid in a plastic bin with a lid on it. That is strong circumstantial evidence, which is used in this country every day to convict people, that was placed there in hopes that no one was going to find it. $6,000 cash, 4 cell phones turned off, which is odd if you're really trying to get up in the morning and go somewhere, and the alarm was set on one of those phones, but they were off. But what did Ed Wogrowski tell you? He told you that you can't track a phone if it's off. You can't track it. You all learned, if you've learned nothing else, turn your phone off if you don't want to be tracked, because there's all sorts of ways. Lieutenant Willis testified. He showed you the bank records showing what they did when they found out that their son was charged and when there was talk of them being charged. He talked to you about the scene at Oxford High School. And it was a really detailed description of what it was like in that school that day. Because hundreds and hundreds of law enforcement officials went to that school, some miles away. No one asked them to. They just drove there from all different parts. And so it was Tim Willis's job to take all of those people who wanted to help and give them something to do and get the scene processed and start building a case. And answering questions, which is really what an investigation is about. Way before you get to a prosecutor. Because sometimes you never get to the prosecutor. Your job is to go where the evidence leads you. And there were things about this case from the very beginning that just seemed like questions that needed to be answered. And one of them was, that gun was purchased 4 days earlier by James Crumbley, who was the same person who was at the school that day. This is information they're learning immediately. They do a search warrant for the house and for phones, and they find out a lot of information. You saw the video of the shooting. There's a reason we tell the media they have to turn their cameras off. We don't want those images out there. We don't want them to be on the internet. We don't want to encourage another school shooter. And we don't take any pleasure in showing it to you. But it's our job to know the truth and look at it and not look away. He told you how each of those kids died. Hannah was hit immediately after he left the bathroom. You saw the image and it was described to you. Madison Baldwin didn't run. She crouched down. There was a door 4 feet from her. And she put her hands over her head. And he walked right up to her and he shot her at close range in the head. Tate was shot. I talked about that shot he took as he was coming in the door. He had his headphones on. He didn't even know what was going on. And Justin Schilling was shot in the bathroom after several minutes of being in there. It wasn't immediately. Shooter went into the bathroom, stayed there. Justin knew the shooter was there. And there was another student in there as well. You saw him running, Keegan. And he ran after James Crumbley's son shot Justin Schilling, execution style. Defendant's son had access to and the use of this gun. It was preventable and it was foreseeable. You heard during jury selection, and you heard during opening, and if my prediction is you're going to hear it again, that this could be you. This could be any of us. This is what defense, this is their defense, that this could be you if you let your kid drive a car or leave with a sharp object. This couldn't be everybody. This couldn't be the person that takes their kid hunting. This couldn't be the person that buys a gun for their child to use, for their minor child, for their use. That doesn't create a criminal charge, ladies and gentlemen. It couldn't happen simply because you purchased a firearm or simply because you let your kid drive a car. Beware of the claim that this could be you. Beware. It is not the case that finding James Crumbley guilty of gross negligence would result in a criminal charge for every parent who doesn't know what their child is doing at all times. And it is not the case that he was faced with the same normal challenges as parents that we all go through and suddenly found himself in a courtroom being charged with involuntary manslaughter. It is just not the case, and the evidence shows it. In June, the Derringer and the Caltech were purchased by James Crumbley. We know that Caltech was left out, unsecured, with ammo. Why do we know that? You saw that picture and video and the one he sent to his friend, and you saw the text that accompanied it.